It's time for Q&A in the Kitchen. That's a podcast and YouTube series where tattoo artists and piercer talk about common questions that those that collect tattoos and piercings may have. Brought to you in part by Skin Kitchen Tattoo and the Axiom Body Piercing Studio. Today we're going to be talking about urban legends relating to tattooing and body art. But before we get into that right away, to my right, your left, Jimmy Two Cheeks St. John.
What's up, guys?
Tattoo artist and tattoo artist.
We have a sound of
just tattoo artist, pirate here on the ship.
Directly to my right and your left is Jack Lowe, Captain Jack.
Captain, my captain.
Nice to see you.
He tattoos at the Skin Kitchen and also owns it.
Yeah.
And our operator.
Yeah.
And then there's me. I already have a nickname, so I don't need an extra one. My name is DaVo, and I do the body piercing at the Axiom Body Piercing Studio and sort of own it.
Kinda.
As much as anyone can.
As much as anyone possibly can claim that, LLC and all that. So what we're going to talk today about is just, like I said, urban legends, things that aren't true, but we hear over and over and over
And
again.
get asked time and
time. I think it's important to say that most of these were started by experts, as in artists who just didn't want to do something at that time, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was just easier to go, yeah, it's this, or
you can't do that.
You can't do that, or,
So getting into it.
Yeah, what do you want to start with?
First one is hands.
Okay.
Now this, as time has gone on and tattooing has gotten more popular and a lot of the BS has been disproven and things through things like TV shows or just, it getting more popular. Back in the day, you would hear all the time that getting your hands tattooed was illegal.
Oh, God. I had a boss that used to tell people that, and I'm like, dude, you can't tell people that it's illegal, and I'm standing here with both my hands tattooed. I look like an idiot.
Right. In my opinion, I think this got started by tattooers not wanting to tattoo hands.
Well, I know where it kind of originated in our area on the coast.
Okay.
On the coast, Virginia Beach, Norfolk. Norfolk's one of the largest naval bases in the world. We also have Fort Lee, one of the largest army bases in the world, right there. We're very close to D.C. and all the hub of military. It is against regulations to tattoo a military man on his hands. Back in the day, it used to be
against the tattoo artist is going to get in trouble.
No.
You could
Right.
if they found out you did it because it was defacing public property. Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
If they knew you, if an artist came in AWOL drunk and wanted your hands tattooed and you didn't tattoo him, number one, you didn't ID him. Number two, you didn't have any idea who you were tattooing. Number three, if there's any trace back to you, you're held liable for defacing government property. And the sailor or soldier and the artist were liable back in the days, in the 40s and 50s and 60s and stuff back then.
And that was a way to get
And it was actually outlawed. Virginia Beach was only allowed to start tattooing again, which they're still
You
not
mean tattooing as a whole?
Yeah.
at all.
Right.
We're
talking about tattooing hands, and you said it, so I wanted to make sure people knew what the words that you left out that were just in your head. Because
All right. Well, back even now, you cannot tattoo or own or operate a tattoo shop on the ocean front. You have to be a certain amount of miles inland and have a shop operating there until I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago they finally got it legal again. There.
wow.
Yeah,
that
it was
recently?
outlawed. Yeah,
Wow.
it was outlawed. Oklahoma was the last state to allow tattooing legally.
Well, I knew not too long, really, after I started tattooing. New York, there were still places that, or I don't know if it was New York proper, but there were
New York City.
several cities or whatever around the U.S. when I started that it still was illegal.
And it was because of the hepatitis scare.
Yeah,
of
exactly.
The late 50s, early 60s, where, and it was an entirely different industry, and it wasn't like these guys were sitting there trying to give people hepatitis.
No.
They just didn't know better because nobody bothered to tell them.
Doctors didn't even wear gloves at that time for procedures. Nobody knew.
Well, I don't know if that's exactly at the same time frame, but the thing is the practices they were using in the tattoo shop, I think they were just mostly not regulated. I don't think they were really under any regulation. So the way they used to do it back in the old sailor days, we'll call it, is they would use a bucket.
With some Lysol.
Yeah, they would use a bucket with some sort of solvent in it or some sort of soap, Listerine, something like that, and there would be a sponge in that bucket. And for all day, maybe that week, they would clean your tattoo, the area, and while they're tattooing, by taking that sponge out of the bucket, squeezing it off a bit, wiping you off, and throwing that sponge back in that bucket. Like I said, they would use that bucket all day, all week, kind of just depended on the shop, but there was no type of cross-contamination prevention whatsoever. Right. So in banning those tattoo shops at the time, yeah, that probably did help. Yeah. But what would have really helped is some education for these people and how to properly do what they're doing. But you have to think too, this was back in the day when germs like that type of thing wasn't even
right.
It wasn't that big a deal.
Well, and they didn't know a lot about it. Doctors still recommended smoking to calm your nerves.
Well,
exactly.
Yeah, they were still trying to develop. Well, even back then, what he's talking, if you went in for surgery, they're going to wear gloves.
Right.
The fact of the matter was, there was not I don't think there was a readily developed, mass-produced latex gloves until maybe the 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they I think they even reused those. They were like rubber, like the kind you used,
like dishwash gloves.
Yes, exactly.
Gloves,
so it wasn't even thought of, and they had no idea there was a disease like hepatitis that was that
dangerous.
Not dangerous. Could survive in situations that they thought everything would die.
Right.
Yeah, that's
like this idea that it's 28 days on the right surface in the right conditions.
Right.
Something that can kill you.
Yeah, that's a good point. There were diseases, there were things, but mostly a penicillin shot could kill most everything. There was nothing like HIV even back in those days that that can spread and it can just kill you. And on top of that, like we said, the research and the science hadn't really been done to the point to where it was taken seriously, I guess.
Yeah,
not yet.
So what I was going to say about the hand tattoo thing is that's a really good point, because me being in the Midwest for my whole life and never tattooing on the coast whatsoever, that wouldn't have occurred to me. It's not in my wheelhouse. So when I was hearing those things back in the day, and after I'd been tattooing a while, I realized, I'm like, yeah, that could be a useful thing to say other than, no, it sucks and I don't really want to do it. You just say it's illegal. And that went with the face tattoos as well.
Right.
If you can't tattoo your face, it's illegal. In your case, on the coasts and things like that, I could see how there was regulations and it was a bad deal. But for me, my thinking on it was, well, you're just a lazy tattooer.
Absolutely.
And you're not honest, with your clients. So you just hide behind this law.
And I think that's where a lot of these urban myths come from.
Yeah,
absolutely.
They come from that, and they come from misinformation on the internet.
Totally.
Right. Yeah. But like I said, a lot of these started even before the internet.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah. Way before that.
Right.
Where information was very, very hard to come by in most cases.
Yeah.
And usually it was a tattoo artist telling another tattoo artist, and there was a whole thing with, and we talked about this on past episodes, where if they consider you competition, they're going to do everything they can to mess up your business.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it was back then it was at least a brick through the front of your store or a quick drive-by with a few bullet holes in your store.
Mm-hmm.
It would get to burning them down. It was a very turf-oriented thing, a very unprofessional business, and that of course only fueled the negative response that the general public had against tattoos and the tattooed people and the people that did them, because they were kind of right,
Well, yeah, partially, but it fueled that stigma because they were only in bad, rougher neighborhoods, lower class income areas, and the people that were in them were bikers or gangsters, and they were ran by bikers or gangsters, so it bred that kind of activity. And
obviously not all of them.
No, not all of them, but that's what led a lot of the stigma with the idea of tattoos.
It drew a lot of those people to the industry.
Absolutely.
And you kind of had two options. You were either going to have a permanent shop in an area that is usually, you have to have a steady stream of income, clientele, so you're either next to the port, next to an army base, or in a rougher neighborhood where there's plenty of people, and that's how you start getting associations with outlaws. The other thing is, the other option was to be, carny or circus, which those don't, didn't really attract the best people either.
Well, and
So
you have to consider too. Back then, there were very, very, very fewer clients.
Oh yeah.
There was a very, the pool. I mean, women didn't get tattooed. There were very few women that ever got tattooed, so much to the point to where there were shops that would say women tattooed for free in the window and wouldn't go out of business. So there's very much smaller clientele, so it was a lot harder to make the money. So if a shop opened up not too far away, well, they're taking one of the two people that could get tattooed. You know what I mean? Not two, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So there was a lot more attention. And now these days it's become you survive whether you do a good job or not.
Yeah.
If you do a good tattoo, it doesn't matter, how many shops are around you. They're going to find you because you do that kind of
Quality.
that type of tattoo. So, yeah, I think that's a big part of why they got so overreactive when it came to other shops and things.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, because it was very limited resources. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
So it's
even getting equipment and things.
Yeah.
Like today, anyone can go online
And buy something.
and get what they need to what we call the fuck up your buddy special. Is what we called it in Chicago. And they would, they can get all they need to do what they're seeing on TV and usually do it long enough to go, this is hard, this isn't worth the trouble, and that's then they sell it to someone else, and it just
Even in
spreads
the
out.
late 90s when I started, there was very few tattoo supply stores.
Yeah.
And when you did contact them, if you wanted to buy something, you had to send them proof that you were a tattoo artist in a shop, because it wasn't licensed yet in a lot of places. But you had to prove, the business license or whatever of the tattoo shop. You had to send your business card in. Even when you went to conventions, you couldn't just walk up to Smitty's tattoo supply and buy a bottle of ink. He would go, "Oh, let me see your business card. You're covered in tattoos. Congratulations. You could have just got tattooed, but that doesn't mean you're."
I think it was National that started that.
National was big about that. Smitty's was huge on it.
And Spalding, they sold it pretty much.
Yeah, Spalding was never like
never like that. Danny Fowler was like that with Time Machine. Even when Kingpin kind of started out, they were the same way. They had to have your shop on record and blah 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 with their system, before they would sell you stuff.
And there are still, as far as I can, there are still a couple places that do that.
Absolutely.
You have to put in the shop that you work at, and from my understanding, generally what they do is they will go to your website
and check it
and see, Xavier does work there. Okay, he's a tattooer. He's got a shop. That's where I'm sending the stuff. Comfortable.
Right.
But if you called up, Xavier called up and didn't have a website to give and was working out of his house or whatever,
you didn't get anything.
They would not sell you anything. Now it's become so oversaturated and so available that it's almost not worth it to these companies to put any kind of roadblock. Some do just, because they're not comfortable, fueling that fire, we'll call it, or, being responsible for any of that, which is totally fine. It's a private business. They can make you jump up and down 5 times before they sell you something if they want to. But, I definitely support and understand why they would do something
Absolutely,
like
me
that.
too.
But now it's frivolous.
Yeah. But with the internet, anybody that's licensed could buy it and then turn around and sell it to just whoever. You know what I mean? Stuff still becomes available for whatever reason, whatnot.
But in our business, if someone was to do that, they would be
shunned.
Boy, yeah, they wouldn't.
Absolutely.
They
and
might,
rightly so.
They would be. They would have to associate with people that have really not a business being in tattooing. And you're probably going to make a living, but I wouldn't feel good about that.
Yourself,
but it's a saturated thing.
One of the common misconception questions I used to get was, if you cut my tattoo, will it bleed in color? I'm like, yeah, red.
But
funny. No, you're not going to bleed in multicolors if you cut your tattoo.
No, not at all.
You're just going to bleed in normal old red like everybody else.
Yeah, that's not that pigment is not sitting in your skin as a liquid like it's in a bag or something. It's dispersed. It's dispersed into your tissue. So unless your tissue somehow turns runny and runs, that color is going to stay in that tissue.
Right.
And there's just no way that can happen. That's funny though. I've never been asked that.
I used to get it asked all the time on the coast, and I was just like, man. Finally, I was being a smart butt and was just like, yeah, you're going to bleed red.
Yeah, no matter what color, it's going to bleed red.
Even if it's a green tattoo, it's going to be red.
Yeah, I worked for a guy and he was old school and probably not trained, the way some of us were, but he would, get done with the tattoo, and the person would look at it. Oh, that's great, and he'd go, "Man, you want some more red in that?" And they'd be like,
"Slap it."
Yeah, yeah, and kabam. So if you ever have an artist ask you if you want more red, decline.
Or if they say they want to set the ink.
Yeah,
that was fun.
That's a good one to talk about. Yep, setting ink. That's really dumb and does not do anything.
Well, here's
Just
the problem.
hurts. Really bad.
Here's the problem with it. If you got a really detailed fine line like that skull you did the other day that was so tiny, like a thumbnail with the teeth and all that, if some jackass come up to set it and slap that super hard, he could blow all that face of that skull out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because it would destroy the tissue.
What it would probably do is you could dislodge the scabbing and pull off and disturb that, which is gonna pull that ink out and gonna make it look spotty. Give it holidays is what we call it in the industry when you have little missing spots.
Went on holiday.
Yeah, it's called holidays. So yeah, it's never good. Even right after, there's no purpose other than just machoism, I guess.
Yeah.
Or and somebody messing with you and taking advantage of your
meanness.
Yeah, it was just a way of picking with people that had new tattoos.
Hazing.
There's nothing to that at all.
No, there isn't.
And I tell people sometimes to mess with them, and this is totally untrue, and they know it at least a couple seconds after. Very few people kind of fall for it, but there are those couple they're like, "Oh, we almost done?" And I'm like, except for the clear coat. That doesn't exist. That's just something silly to entertain us at your expense, I guess. But I don't do that a lot. But
I think probably one of the most common piercing ones is that piercing is going to make you paralyzed, or is going to cut off the nerve endings, or it's going to fix you in some shape or form. The most common one is I can't do your tongue because you'll become paralyzed.
Yeah.
No. If your flurnium tendon, which is a tendon on the underside of your tongue, is too far forward, we don't want to pierce through it because you're not going to be able to have that bar down there.
Or if you have the vein in the center of your tongue instead of the two on the sides. I've seen that every once in a while.
That's even hit or miss because
it's not everybody, but yeah.
Because that'll stop bleeding immediately. What people think is this numbness at the front of their tongue and that it's paralyzed is it's swollen. Mm-hmm. And whenever your body swells, the nerve endings move further apart and they are not as sensitive as they are normally. It's a way of your body trying to protect itself, but also if there's more impact in the area, you're not going to be like, "Oh my God," every time.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's why that same idea is why, a rib tattoo hurts more than maybe a forearm. Your forearms aren't meant to be, super protected. Your body knows they're out there. They get a lot of stimuli, and it's not damaging anything. It's just the nature of your arm. So there's not a ton or as many nerve endings as there are on your ribs.
Oh, yeah.
Your ribs underneath there's some important stuff.
Yep.
So your body wants you to know if there's something going on right around there, and so it packs more nerve endings in there. And why, when you're getting tattooed, say across your shoulder blades or even on down your ribs, there'll be some places that will light you up, and then there'll be other places where you're like, wow, I'm not really feeling that, because your nerve endings in your body are not laid out like a perfect grid whatsoever.
No.
They're like roots of a tree or a plant.
Everywhere.
And they branch out and they get concentrated more in one spot than another. So asking someone, "Hey, does it hurt there?" Well, it might have for them.
Yeah.
More so or less so than it's going to hurt in that same spot for you.
Yeah.
And so when people ask me, "Well, how much does that area hurt?" I can only tell you very generally, but I'm not going to be able to tell you how much it's going to hurt you.
Right.
I can say out of the 1,000 I've done in that spot, generally people want to jump off a bridge. Or vice versa. Nobody wants to jump off a bridge. Or at least they have. They didn't tell me.
It's the same reason, like when you're a kid, you're super ticklish in that area.
Exactly. And
it's almost painful when they do it.
Exactly that.
Yep.
And
my general rule is pretty much anything that feels good to touch, like, really nice sensation to touch, is going to hurt like heck to get tattooed generally because there's so many more nerve endings in that spot.
Absolutely.
This armpit area over here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, up under your armpit, your throat, your kneacaps, behind your
Nothing
kneecaps,
is worse
inside your
than
thighs.
doing navel piercing on a girl that's ticklish.
Oh boy.
Oh man, I know it's gonna hurt him.
Yeah.
See what I do.
Can't tell him that
when I get a giggler. The best thing that works for me is I just say, hey, imagine a sack of dead kittens.
I don't know. That might be joyous.
I've only had one girl laugh harder after I said that. They all go, oh, and it just chills them right back to middle. So tattooers out there,
next time.
Try the sack of dead kittens for your gigglers.
One of my favorites is when you're tattooing somebody's arm. They're over the armrest. Well, your arm's uncomfortable. It's over an armrest, so it's putting pressure and cutting off your blood circulation. We've all played that game as kids.
Yeah.
You hang your arm over, it makes your veins bigger, it goes to sleep, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, can we take a break so I can get the feeling back in my arm? I'm like,
why?
So you want to feel the pain? Because right now is your most opportune time to really just sit.
Yeah.
Once you've hit that groove, your endorphins are in, your arm's numb, you're, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Oh, I want to stand up and I want to get all the feeling back in it. I'm like, okay, so you want it to be painful.
Well, I think when that happens, sometimes it's, they may be getting tattooed here but their hand is numb and it gets almost to that painful kind of thing. Yeah. And normally what I'll say is like, man, if only, where I was tattooing was numb instead of your hand, but there could be an advantage to that, but still what's kind of, what the downside of that is if you're numb, you really can't tell if you're moving. I think you might be more,
twitchy.
able to twitch because, there's not that blood circulation there. So,
initially I was used to I never said anything to anybody. I always let them have a break or whatever, but it just always struck me as like, wow, if I could get something to go to sleep while they were tattooing it, I'd be all over that.
Oh, I know, right? But the discomfort from being numb could almost
can be as bad.
It sucks too.
No, it's true. That's funny.
Tattooing colors over existing tattoos to make them fade.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. It's not a painting. You're not a canvas. If you have a black tattoo, I don't care how much white you tattoo over it, it's not turning white or light. It's black, and it's going to cause the white to turn gray or black when I tattoo it in it. Yeah. Because it's mixing with that pigment that's in that under the skin.
This is the way I try to explain it, and it usually works pretty well, is it's not like painting a wall where you're just putting another layer over the top of it. Think of it more as you have a bucket of paint. So if you have blue and you want to turn it, purple, okay, we can kind of do that because all I got to do is pack some red in there. That purple's going to or that blue's going to show through, and it'll make kind of purple. It's a guessing game, just as if you had that bucket and you poured the red in there and stirred it up. Well, the stirring it up is it healing. So it's not a practice that's that's very viable. So the same thing, if you have like a bucket of yellow and you want to turn it blue, well, you're not going to get it blue because there's still some yellow in there. So it's going to get kind of a greenish blue if you're lucky. So you're sharing the space with that color that's in there. So the lighter that color is and the darker the color you want to put over it, it will push closer to that darker color, but that paint, that color is still going to be in there mixed with the color you put in there. So So with covering up black or something else with white, well, it's the same thing. You've got a bucket of black paint and you pour white in there, it'll kind of lighten that black a little.
Turns to a gray.
But it's not generally, depending on how black it was and how well the artist can saturate over it, it's never gonna be true the color that you used over it. That's why when you do cover-ups, you want to use textures. You want to kind of break up what's underneath so your eye can't figure it out. So even if you can see some lines and things.
The focus of your cover-up is very opposite of what people coming in thinking. I want to cover this up, so they're thinking of everything that's going to be right there on top of it.
Like a big
I don't want that to be the main focus because that's where I'm covering it up. The biggest focus of this piece is going to be somewhere else away from that, and the other stuff that comes off of it, the filler, is going to be the cover-up area.
Yeah. So there are some artists that have some good results, or because of what they're going to do, will go in and smash over some things to try to lessen it a little bit, just so they can get away with a little more when they do the cover-up. You have maybe a little more options. So, yes, it can be done, but it can never be truly used as a cover-up method, or you're never going to be able to just smash over something, another layer, and make it go away. I wish it was like that.
I do too.
It would make my job so much easier.
Yeah.
But because of things like that, that's why you see so many terrible tattoos, because there's so much of those type of things going on in tattooing that if you don't know them, then you're going to have a bad result.
Blacklight tattoos that can only be seen in blacklight.
I have one on the side of my head, but
you still see it regularly.
Well, now that it's older, when you hold the black light over it, you can see parts of it, but it's not as clear.
Out.
Yeah, it just kind of falls out and dissipates under the skin.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
A lot of people refer to it as glow in the dark.
Yeah.
I so far have never seen anything like that. I've never seen a tattoo that you go out in the sun, charge it up like you did with your things on your watch or something, and then get in a dark room and oh my God, it glows. I would not get that in me.
No,
if
anything
it
that glows,
but it does not, as far as I know, has not existed. Right. I don't think there is a healthy way that you could implant or introduce something like that into your skin and not have it be mean to you. Somehow.
It's a carcinogen. Anything that does react and glow for whatever, or carcinogen, anything that reacts or glows generally is something that is not okay to put in your body.
Right. Cause cancer.
Yeah,
I would think so. But the UV reactive light that stemmed from airbrush pigment.
Yeah,
and people were using this UV reactive airbrush pigment in tattooing, and we're getting them to glow. Well, industry found out that that's not good to do that. So let's develop something that has tattoo ink on the bottle that'll do the same thing.
And I have seen, like, back when it was less regulated, some of the Japanese ink that would come in, like the Japanese pink and stuff that we get, was super heavy with the powdered pigment in it and was so bright that everyone, not all of it, like you could do your whole chest in Japanese pink and maybe this section glows. The rest of it doesn't. But like I've seen them going black, not so glow, but going black light and it react. Because I've seen that, like I've seen some Japanese pinks, like in some certain cherry blossoms you go in, and it'll react. Under
I've
the
had some orange. I've had an orange that did that really well on some people. It all
not
depends,
everybody.
It all depends on how fair skinned you are.
And see, that's more about the tone, and that's black light. That's
right,
entirely different. What I'm talking about is supposedly you have a tattoo that your skin looks completely untattooed, and then you can go
and you can hold a black light over it. I've had that.
That does exist.
It does. I didn't think it did.
No, it does. That's what I have on the side of my head.
Okay.
Yeah, you can buy it just on its own, just like goes in pretty much clear.
Yep.
And then you'll only see what's there when
the black light hits it.
Is introduced.
I think another one that I should probably bring up at the same time is the white ink tattoo that only shows up when you tan.
Not when you tan, but like when you get red, when you get excited.
Yeah.
So like if you blush like around your chest area when you get excited, then if you do a white tattoo, the theory is that it'll show up a little better. And some people it does. Some people it doesn't. The problem I have with white tattoos is when you put a stencil on to tattoo them, it's purple. Yeah. When I puncture your skin with a needle to go over it with white to tattoo you with it, that purple's mixing in it. So some of it's not going to consistently be just that white.
Yeah.
So there's
techniques that you use to get around that, and it can be. But with the white only showing up, blah blah blah, that all has to do with the contrast that your skin. If you're relatively kind of dark complected anyway, the white will not be white. It as the tint of the skin of whatever it is, is over the top of that ink. So you're looking through a piece of glass or whatever that's tinted. So what's underneath is going to have a little bit of that tint mixed in with that paint, right?
Absolutely.
So if you've got, let's say, a redhead who never sees the sun, who just has this glowing white skin, the pigment, the colors you put in them are going to be the truest. And so if you put white in them, it'll pack in there, and it'll pop. It'll be white as as close. But what color is their skin? It's white. So it's, you're not going to have that contrast, even if it is there for it to pop. Right. So if you use white in a darker person, it'll be there and you'll probably be able to see it, but it's going to be further from white. It's going to be, a lot of people think it looks like a scar or something because it picks up that skin tone. So it's not, so you lose kind of on each end, depending on where your skin tone is. But I haven't really ever heard of that. It's showing up more But I guess that would kind of make sense. Like if you had very white skin and then you smacked it and the skin got red, what's that do? It's increasing the contrast. So now it's not white on white; it's white on red.
Right.
And the skin that's over the top, it might be a little red too. So the white would be a little pink, but it's still gonna have more contrast than it would against the white skin. Wow, write that down.
Well, another misconception I used to hear all the time. I don't want any white in my tattoo because it hurts more.
Yep.
The thing is, whatever the last color or last thing I'm doing is going to hurt the most because that's the trauma, the most recent trauma that you're receiving. For black and gray tattoos, it's a little faster. That's why they generally don't take as much time sometimes, because once you go over it and do it, you've done with it. Now, when you do a color tattoo, you're putting some shade in here, then you're putting this darker color. Now you're adding a lighter color back over this one and fading into this area, then this color fading from that into that. That you're reworking over and over and packing stuff onto that skin and going over that area so many times that it's raw. It hurts.
So basically, the longer you're getting tattooed, the more it hurts. So the last thing you do generally is white highlights. So and you're going all over the place back into that tattoo. So even a black and gray tattoo, if you go in and you're putting white in it, it's going to hurt worse because you're not kind of slowly working, numbing, and over like kind of burning out those nerve endings, then it's been 3 hours since you've been down here. Now you're going to take a tight liner or a tight shader and go back and go back in those spots that are sore. So that's why white gets a bad rap of being the most painful. It's only because of the process and when it's used.
Exactly.
Do you think one of the reasons why it's sensitive in that area is your body's kind of going, you've already created trauma here and we've been working hard to try to repair it, and your ass comes along and does that?
Yeah.
Well, if you scrape your leg and then you go back into that scrape and start digging stuff out of it, it hurts worse than when you scraped it because you're going into a wounded area,
Yeah, and I would assume there's some science to that, to where your body's like, yo, this is already hurt.
Doing?
Now it's getting, this has got to stop. And so, you could get more sensitive in that area, and it's just the nature of the timing of when you use it.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring up a couple of piercing ones because back to the paralyzation and fixing things, like there was a long time the reason why they didn't pierce in the middle of the eyebrow was it was going to cause paralysis. No.
Make your face droop.
Yeah. Ear piercings are to make you quit smoking. All that stuff that's based on acupuncture. That's all bullshit. I would like to say that I've had some clients that they've gotten the daith piercing that had migraines that say it helped, but
So what's a daith and what's that all about?
A daith is done if you take your finger and you put it at the top of your ear and you follow the helix down towards the front of your face, and that goes kind of inward right above the ear canal. That's where a daith piercing or a dath piercing, depending on who taught you, is done. It is a pressure point in acupuncture and reflexology in Eastern medicine that's going to alleviate headaches. So it became very popular because somebody on some forum somewhere on the internet said that it worked.
Yeah.
It was great for me because it boosted the business of doing that particular piercing, which I like that piercing a lot. But from the same standpoint, I have to explain that every single time because I don't feel comfortable going.
It's kind of like burning sage. There's no science that says it's going to work, but some people would swear by it, and some people would think it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yep.
And hey, the thing is, if it works for you, if it makes you happy, if it lowered your pain in your head or it got the ghosts out of your house, fine, great, that's awesome. But I can't guarantee that you're going to get this piercing and it's going to make you never have a headache.
It's going to boost your self-confidence. It's going to help you with looking prettier, or manlier, depending on
and I like sage because I say that because the one girl that's in the room gave me like death stare. I don't know if you could tell I was talking my way out of a murder. But yeah. If you burn sage, awesome. Good for you.
Especially if it's part.
Just remember to set up your crystals just right before you do it.
Well, it almost goes back to like the trials for medicine, the placebo. Some people get the medicine, some people get a sugar pill.
Right.
Yeah.
And they've had cases of people who, for whatever reason, were ill, and the sugar pill, because it was, in their mind or whatever, changed how they thought about it. And it worked, and if that's how it does, then great. But
same thing.
Like anything else, it is not guaranteed.
Yeah.
Another one. Dairy and oral piercings.
Yeah, what's that about?
Yeah.
It causes thrush, which it
Nice.
doesn't.
Oh,
Thrush is caused by a breakdown of the natural enzymes of bacteria in your mouth and a fungi that actually exists in your digestive tract
Okay.
called thrush will outgrow. It'll take over, and it'll coat your tongue with this cottage cheese-looking substance.
Yeah.
It's very disgusting. Burns, itches, etc. usually will require medical attention, and it can get as bad as going down into your esophagus and causing all kinds of problems if you don't get it taken care of. Now, for years, people have been saying that drinking alcohol, wine, and dairy products of any type was going to give you this yeast infection.
I've heard that.
Because it's a misconception that this is a yeast problem, which it isn't. It's a thrush problem.
Yeah.
It's two different things.
That makes sense that people get confused.
So, yeah. So, and the only trace that I can find of this, like eating dairy, you're not supposed to do it when you're healing wounds in Eastern medicine. You're also not supposed to eat chicken.
That's ridiculous.
So yeah, it's if you believe in that stuff, great.
What
But
do
if
you
you
do with all
don't,
the chickens?
no. I think it came about because of the thinking that there was going to be even uncultured yogurt or cultured yogurt that's got a free culture in it, or beer that has not been. Everything else has been pasteurized. Nothing is living in there.
No.
Unless you're drinking raw milk straight from the cow or goat,
Which is delicious.
Yeah, I don't know.
It is yummy.
I don't like it when it's warm. Yeah, that's just me.
You can refrigerate it
Yeah, I
before
know.
you drink it.
Basically, there's nothing alive in there. There's no way this can feed the yeast or create or introduce yeast into it. The same thing with most alcoholic beverages. They kill it off, or the yeast has ate all the sugar and died off long before it's in your hands.
Right.
Right.
So you're drinking the carcasses of it.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
They call it yeast cake.
Drink up.
Like you're supposed to remove that when you
Take
make
that
beer.
off. Yeah.
Oh, like is that
otherwise-
scrape it off the top,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, otherwise it makes this really bitterness. Same thing with cheeses and et cetera. There are a few cheeses where
Yeah, you
they'll
pull
have
the
live
whey off.
culture, but there's not enough in there that's going to make any difference.
Nope.
In fact, there's beneficial, especially with yogurt, that it's going to help your digestive tract. It has probiotics. I believe it's also got oxidants. Anyway, it's good for you. Keeps you healthy. None of that's going to give you thrush.
That's good to know.
Over rinsing, over cleaning, that gives you yeast infections and thrush.
Yeah, you're destroying your natural balance of all the stuff. It's
Or
like
putting your piercing in a dirty place.
introducing
yeah.
too many wolves, and then they don't
Well,
have
it's like when I first started piercing, we tell people to rinse with Listerine for 30 seconds every time you ate something.
I remember that.
Or had a cigarette or a sip of soda. Of course, it was going to cause thrush because you're constantly filling up everything in your mouth. No, we don't suggest doing that anymore. So yeah, that's like one of my biggest pet peeves.
Huh.
Is that one?
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah,
Nice.
One that pops up into my head that is kind of the one I've heard a lot is my skin doesn't take red.
yeah.
That's not true. There's no difference in that red than anything else other than it reflects the red band in the frickin' color spectrum off of it. So why people say that, in my opinion, I haven't written a paper on it yet, but this is my opinion, is what happens when you stick a bunch of needles in skin?
Turns red.
Turns red. And so what do you think happens when I'm using red and I go across your skin and I wipe it? Well,
Doesn't really look like it's in there.
I think that red's in there. You know what? I'm going to make sure. And then I go over it again. And I'm like, maybe, just maybe a third time. So you end up, that color more than any other one ends up getting overworked just because, especially on some people's, the color of their skin could be a little harder to tell. So they come back to the artist and go, hey man, the red got really weird and it fell out. You just don't take red. No,
you just didn't apply it correctly.
you didn't pick the right tattoo guy.
Yep.
Now you can be allergic to certain things in certain colors. It's very rare, especially now. They've really gotten these inks dialed in, and are really, really careful of this. Before, when 6 people a year were getting tattooed, no big deal. But now that 60 trillion are getting tattooed, they want to make sure that no one's getting sick or having a negative reaction to their pigment. So you do take red. If you're not allergic to it, because your body will try to push out as much as possible of that pigment because it doesn't like it. But it's mostly from overworking and typically an artist who is less experienced.
Misuse of their tools.
And lies to you.
Oh, I got one.
Yeah.
My buddy tattooed me, and it all fell out. I don't think he pushed hard enough. You're not pushing. I'm not applying pressure to you.
No, or went deep enough.
Or went deep enough, yeah.
Yeah.
The machine, you went to the wrong artist again, basically. Someone that was unknowledgeable. Their machine wasn't set up correctly. Their depth of their needle wasn't correct, or, whatever reason. Or they wasn't using proper tattoo ink. The machine is set up to hit at a certain way, and the needle is set up to go to a certain depth. That's what applies a good tattoo correctly. If you're aware of that depth and you constantly are, aware of the different changing in the spot of the body and the skin thickness and tightness of where you're tattooing at. I'm not forcing the ink into you by pushing it into you.
Right.
That's not happening.
Yeah, and there's a very small sweet spot in your epidermis, in your skin, or in your dermis. Epidermis is dead. But the dermis, to get that pigment to stay and look really nice and solid. So yeah, you're kind of right. Maybe they didn't go deep enough, but chances are they overworked it.
Yeah. Pushed it out.
Instead of putting a tiny hole and pushing a little pigment in there and getting out, they're creating basically one big hole, and then your body, as it's trying to put that hole back together, is going, get this crap out of here. Instead of going in there going, boom, and your skin going, what was that? Oh, okay, must have been nothing.
Right.
And then it just goes zip and locks it in there. So there's way more going into making your tattoo look beautiful and it healing well than, just the depth. Just didn't go deep enough, that's all.
Right.
Yeah.
And this plays into another wives' tale I've heard over the years, which is anybody can tattoo. All you're doing is tracing.
Yeah,
I've heard that a lot.
That's a funny one. I was at a convention once, and I was lucky enough to be sitting with some really great artists, just in this little loungy part outside of the convention. And there was a caretaker, or a guy kind of cleaning up stuff, and he slowly works his way towards us, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you guys here at convention? Yeah." Small talk, and he goes, "Yeah, I always thought tattooing it's pretty easy, right?" And the best the most accomplished tattooer there was, before anybody could say anything, he goes, "Yeah, all you do is trace." And the guy goes, "Yeah, that's what I thought," and just walks away. Dude, it cracked me up so much. But yeah, there's a lot more going into that.
Oh yeah.
And if you do think it is tracing, okay, try this. Shave a spot of your dog, put the stencil on him, and then just trace it
with a pen or
just
a marker.
Trace it. Yeah. I'm sure it'll be great. Or don't forget the dog. Just get a piece of paper and a ballpoint pen and draw a perfect circle on it. And then draw 4 completely parallel lines without a ruler on that piece of paper. Now imagine that piece of paper is bitching, it's moving, it's bleeding, it's squishy, it's asking you every question it can think of, it's jerking its head, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's basically just tracing.
Yeah,
totally.
Tracing.
I used to love that when people would say that, and then when we get done with the tattoo, they're like, "Man, all that depth and that shading, man, just wow." I mean, how did you do that? And I'm like, "Oh, I just traced it."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like when people. That's my standard reply, and it has been for a couple of years. When everybody is like, "Oh, do you tattoo?" I'm like, no, I don't like coloring.
Yeah,
right.
Never like coloring.
Never did like coloring books.
Yeah. But I mean, it really is, because I don't want to go through what it takes to get those skills.
Right.
Yeah, that's why I'm not a race car driver.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I don't work in a factory building things.
I make a joke a lot of times. People are like, "Oh, I wanted this." I'm like, "Okay, well, if you want a word or a phrase or something, I get you to jot it down, because I'm going to draw it off what you did." I'm not a linguist, and I'm not an English teacher. I don't spell for a living. I draw pictures for a living. And one of the guys, I was making this joke, and I'm like, man, I'm not, it's not super. I'm not a rocket scientist. I draw pictures for a living.
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, you know, what you guys do is so easy. And I'm like, yeah, it sure is. Totally easy. First try, no warm up, and it's permanent, and it doesn't erase.
When people
I
say
got
that,
this.
I tell them, I go, that's why you hardly ever see a bad tattoo.
Yeah.
It's so it's so easy. Like you can't screw
mess it up.
Yeah, it's so
Just tracing.
simple.
And see, I get this with piercing too. It's like anybody can pierce. I'm like, no, you have to have the right. You have to have the right skill set.
Yeah.
Well, if you pass out the sight of blood or you're squeamish, you're not going to be a good piercer because when you get halfway through it and you pass out and rip whatever it is off of them, it's probably not going to be real good.
No.
And you have to have that aesthetic eye.
Absolutely.
You have to be able to look at something. Oh, that's where it belongs. And you have to have the passion to actually study it. You can't just be like, yep, looks good there. Looks good there.
Yeah, you're gonna get way less result. You're gonna, it's just not gonna be as good as it could have been.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think part of the problem is that the better you get at your skill, the easier you make it look.
Well, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I don't like being filmed.
That reminds me. I don't watch the tattoo shows at all. I get asked that all the time, and I really don't. But when Miami Ink, their first season, it was like the first tattoo show. I watched that, and they were filming Chris Garver while he was tattooing, and I think it was someone behind the camera said, "Man, you make it look so easy," and he looks at the camera and goes, "It is if you know what you're doing."
Exactly.
Right. I remember that. Yep.
Yeah, and that really stuck with me. At first, I was like, "What?" Oh, but no, that's absolutely true. It is easy if you know what you're doing.
If you do know what you're
and
doing,
I know what I'm doing. That's why it looks easy.
Yeah. All these years of experience is what makes it appear that I'm doing it effortlessly.
Right.
Well, like even with the lettering, like, oh, you didn't. Well, when I tattoo a word, first off, I'm right-handed, so I start from the right and go left. I don't write it like I would writing left to right. And when I'm doing it, let's say it's the word. I'm focusing on the D, just the D, and I'm done with the D. Okay, now I'm focusing on just the R and how it connects to the D. I'm not looking at its word, W-O-R-D.
Yeah,
I'm not looking at that at all. I'm looking at this letter, that letter, where the flow is, the curve. I don't even really see a letter. I see a shape.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're working out.
And that's why a lot of times, how did you misspell this? I didn't misspell it.
Right.
Spelled it.
Yeah.
Generally.
Yeah. People get that wrong impression with names. Oh, it's just a name. Well, it's not like I'm just signing your arm. It's not a word. These are very intricate shapes that have to be the same line weight, that have to be the same space, that have to look beautiful, like it came out of a machine.
Right.
I'm not looking at it as, oh yeah, I'm just going to write Dan on you, no big deal.
Not at all.
So yeah, that's kind of a misconception where people think that a name or lettering is just the easiest thing ever. It's just like, okay, a circle is a simple thing. Draw me a perfect circle first time on a piece of paper. Well, it's just a circle. It's just a circle, dude. Why can't you just draw a perfect circle? On a piece of paper. Right. So it's not just tracing.
Okay, I'm gonna do two more piercing myths, and then I think we've done this pretty well. Unless you guys,
unless I think of something awesome, and while you're talking.
First one is that anybody that has genital piercings has been sexually assaulted at some point in their life.
Ooh, I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, that one was a big one there for a long time. The other thing is that having an oral piercing is going to make you better at giving oral sex.
Ladies are disappointed.
Absolutely not true.
Nope.
No, I've experienced
suck at
that
it or you don't.
more than from one applicant.
Right.
And you don't. It's
It doesn't improve
no
anything.
different at all. Now I haven't had. They do make vibrating.
Yeah,
But that you might
those are
feel some.
worthless.
But why get if you're getting a piercing, why wouldn't you just use the vibrator? So yeah, it looks cool. It's fashionable. It's fun to click on your teeth and annoy your friends. But it's not going to help your relationship out in an oral thing. You just need to watch more adult movies, look at some technique, and practice.
Practice.
Practice,
And
practice,
more
practice.
importantly, ask your partner what you're doing wrong
Yeah, no.
Yeah, pretty much.
and what you're doing right.
Yeah.
The other thing is that women that have tongue piercings suddenly are more promiscuous and like certain activities more so.
But-
chances are they just like tongue piercings.
But on the other side of that, would a tongue piercing be pleasurable to a woman? No, it's no different. Well, yeah, one
Female
female
in the audience.
in the studio says it doesn't.
Yeah.
Maybe some do. I don't know, but I know from my experience and what I've talked to other guys, you can't.
The idea of it
No, it's not.
Yeah,
is about the most exciting part of it.
Pretty much.
For a female, you can't feel it.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
that's
Same
what
thing.
the
Same thing with
response is.
Same thing for guys.
the guy stuff.
Yeah, you either feel it or you don't feel it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Do we think of any other ones?
that was 2
Yeah, that was
two.
3 actually.
Yeah, actually, it was 3.
that you did since I said.
Yep.
Yep.
So I'm quick.
Did I pass
Faster than
out?
lightning.
Yeah, that's fast.
We time traveled,
Well,
Jack. We time traveled.
I
The
just,
aliens brought you back so quickly.
I
and
didn't get a
quietly.
chance to discuss them.
Okay, so the first
You
one
did.
was that everyone that has a genital piercing was molested as a child.
Okay,
Or
yeah.
has been sexually assaulted. There's no proof to that.
And-
Just in much the same way that for a long time, every time I would run into somebody who thought they knew about prison, would look at my elbow tattoo, which is a spider web, and go, "So where'd you do time?"
Yeah, and that's a good myth too. I mean,
Right.
now in certain circles, okay, if you and your 5 buddies decide that a bluebird tattooed on your hand right there means that you've got, 6 cars, and that person goes out in the world and sees somebody with a bluebird on their hand right there, they're in their mind going to think they've got 6 cars.
Yeah.
Well, in that little environment he's in, yeah, it might mean that.
Makes
Does it mean it globally? No.
Oh.
So so in prison, yeah, there might be some people that get a web and they add a whatever for the year and everything else. But that doesn't mean every single person you see with a web. You don't have to fill out a waiver and prove to me you've been to prison for me to tattoo a web on you.
No.
You don't have to bring a waiver and show me
Oh,
that
yeah.
you've murdered someone to put a teardrop on your face.
No.
In that at that time, that person got that to symbolize that, either because it means that thing to just him or the circle or environment that he's in. So
Right.
try not to jump to those conclusions when you see certain tattoos on certain people, because they might not even have been to that town where that's a thing or know anything about it. More than likely they got it because they like the way it looks.
Yep,
Cool.
I probably saw it online somewhere. Yeah, the last time somebody asked me
Pinterest.
about it, I'm like, "Oh yeah, you don't even want to know how we got red in prison, red ink." And
Right.
It was horrible.
Right.
And they're like, "What?" And I go, "Never mind."
You don't want to know.
Yeah. So
I guess another one would be, for years I kept hearing, "Oh, if you get a Harley Davidson engine on you and you don't ride, man, the Hells Angels are gonna chase you down," and all this. Like, no, buddy.
that is a case of thinking you're way more important than you
Then you
are.
really are.
Exactly.
Get over your narcissism. I'll tell you right now, and if there's any HAs out there that disagree, please contact me, but none of them give a F about you at all.
Nope.
Like such a little amount of nothing that you don't even exist on the planet.
Long as you're not tattooing insignias and stuff of gangs on your body,
You're
you're,
asking for it.
pretty much okay. But like if you're
in that
ripping off their mascot or whatever that
And I
is
think-
for them or their something,
Right.
then you
Right.
can be in some
And
trouble.
I think if
Exactly.
you accidentally got it done, and then went in, and then we're encountering one of these guys, and you
Yeah.
work in an office
Right.
in New York City and wear a suit every day, and you've got like a full on set of
Yeah.
coat of arms,
N-
they're going
yeah.
to probably come out to you and tell you that.
That's the caveat, because, okay, if it was a sewing circle that had this emblem and you got it tattooed on you, well, that sewing circle isn't really known for going out and beating people up because they got their logo stolen.
Yeah.
So if you got a logo from a group that, say, is a little more aggressive than a sewing circle, and you're sporting around that and you're not a part of that sewing circle, well, then you got to,
Deal with it.
You got to
You gotta deal with
realize that, okay, yeah, I got that one thing because it was cool, but ooh,
Maybe it's not so cool.
and
Yeah.
not in the right environment.
right. So
And you got to hope that the guy's going to go, "Oh, you have nothing to do with my scene, but you should
Yeah.
change that."
Yeah,
And
to
I'm checking
them-
back into you.
to some people, they had to earn that.
Yep.
Right.
It's a status thing for them, and if they had to work really hard to achieve that status to get that, and you just got it, that makes them feel like they're cheated. Like, you don't deserve that. I worked really hard to get this, and you just put it on you. Then you're a poser. You're a grifter.
Yeah, you're faking.
You need to pay for that.
And that's why
Fraud.
it was always really important, especially being the son of a vet, that any type of military stuff, like I used to wear
Yeah.
field jackets and bomber jackets and et cetera, we always made sure there was absolutely no rank on it.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
it's just insulting.
It is.
That's very true. That's very true.
Yeah.
Then, and it was funny. That was one of the things I always found. There's like the famous jacket that John Lennon had, and I won't even get into my dislike of hippies, that had all all the chevrons and everything on it.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was like, out of everything that man said and did that my dad didn't agree with, he yelled and screamed more about that than anything else, because he's like, I earned that in a foxhole in Korea, and blah, 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 doesn't have a right to be wearing it. That's really what you have to think about when you're doing things like that.
And that's exactly the thing. In that community, in that bubble, that's a big deal.
Oh, yeah, it is.
You know, so you might be offending those people. If you don't care about that, that's fine.
But do your homework.
Do whatever you want, you know, and just, you're going to have to
deal with it.
Deal with consequences, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah.
But just know that some people will take those images very, very personally,
seriously.
and they hold them close to their heart for whether it's right or wrong, and they might be upset enough to, you know, do something really bad.
Yep.
All right. I think we've
Yeah.
done pretty well on this
Good
one.
show.
Nice job, gentlemen.
Yeah.
You've been watching and listening to Q&A in the Kitchen. It's a podcast YouTube series of tattoo artists and piercer talking and trying to answer some of the more common questions those that collect and the piercings and the tattoos may have. If you like this, enjoyed this, what have you, please give us a thumbs up or share it with everyone you know. Also subscribe, hit that notification bell so you're notified every single time we post something. Also check out our merch store. Lots of fun stuff there. We do have some new design ideas. I just got to get around to putting them up. Those will be probably going up sometime and then maybe around the time this comes out. Cool. Be out by then. But till next time, here's hoping all your piercings and tattoos heal with ease and without a single issue. And if you're in the Des Moines, Iowa area, we'd love to see you for your body piercing and tattooing needs in the future. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you for watching.
Thanks, guys. Be good to each other.
Or listening.